So, why am I wearing a Star Wars shirt for this mini lesson on the difference between plot and story in dramatic writing? Because, in my judgment, George Lucas's science fiction saga about the Skywalker family illustrates this difference in ways both good and bad. But before that cinematic critique, let's start with the actual lesson. So, what is the difference between plot and story? When it comes to this distinction, the authors of creative writing textbooks are fond of quoting the late novelist E.M. Forster. And speaking of science fiction, for any of you who are fans of that genre, I recommend reading Forster's simply prescient 1909 short story, The Machine Stops. In his book, Aspects of the Novel, Forster represented the difference between story and plot through two similar sentences. The sentence, "The king died and then the queen died," Forster said, is an example of a story. Notice here the exclusive concentration on a what and a what. That is, two events. The sentence, "The king died and then the queen died of grief," Forster said, is an example of a plot. Notice here the inclusion of a why, the establishment of a cause and effect relationship between two events. If your drama only has a story, it will seem merely episodic to your audience. That is, events will simply seem to happen to your characters for no apparent reason. But if your drama also has a plot, each scene will seem to be both the effect of the scene before and the cause of the scene after. That will mean that your characters' dialogue and actions have consequences. That is, what they say and what they do will be the reasons why events happen in your drama. Another difference between story and plot in dramatic writing is that story can take place both offstage and onstage, or both off-screen and on-screen. That is, a character's story may start in the past, before the present part of it we watch. And that character's story may continue into the future, after the present part of it we watch. However, plot is the present part of the character's story we see on stage or on screen. When you set out to write a drama, whether a play or a screenplay, an important point to remember is that just because an event happens in a character's story, that does not mean that it has to show up in the plot of your drama. For an example of this from playwriting, think about Sophocles' play Oedipus the King. The plot of that particular play starts at an advanced point in the story of the character Oedipus. When we meet Oedipus at the start of the play, for example, he has, without knowing it, already been abandoned by his biological parents, raised by adoptive parents, killed his biological father, and married his biological mother. Although these are important parts of Oedipus's story, we do not see them happen in the play, in the plot. For an example of this from screenwriting, think about Lucas's script for what was the original Star Wars. Nowadays, they want us to call it Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. Similarly, this plot of that particular movie starts at an advanced point in the story of the character of Anakin Skywalker, by then known as Darth Vader. When we meet Anakin at the start of the movie, for example, he has already been conceived without a father, born a slave on Tatooine, apprenticed to Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, fathered the twins who will grow up to be Luke and Leia, seduced by the dark side of the Force, and transformed into a ruthless cyborg Sith Lord. Again, although these are important parts of Anakin's story, we do not see them happen in the movie Star Wars, in the plot. And this finally brings me to my critique of Lucas's saga about the Skywalker family. When creating the original trilogy of films, the ones we now know as Episode 4, Episode 5, and Episode 6, Lucas made an excellent decision about at what point in the story he came to call the tragedy of Darth Vader to start the plot of the movies. So the original trilogy, which are stronger movies, are good examples. However, when Lucas later decided to make the prequels Episode 1, Episode 2, and Episode 3, he forgot that important lesson we learned earlier. Just because an event happens in a character's story, that does not mean it has to show up in the plot of your drama. So the prequel trilogy, which are weaker movies than the original trilogy, are our bad examples. But at least they help us to understand the difference between plot and story in dramatic writing.